From Peterson's fame turning him into a global phenomenon to his widespread popularity on social media platforms. Here are the main reasons why you should listen to Jordan Peterson. Now, it's gotta be said that Jordan's rise to fame is nothing short of a phenomenon. In a lot of ways, Peterson isn't saying things that are inherently new or groundbreaking, but his ability to say those things in the first place and to have his message reach out and be understood by millions of followers is what makes the guy so widely popular. But he wasn't always so famous. In fact, until just a couple of years ago, most people probably hadn't even heard about this psychology professor from the University of Toronto. But in recent years, the dude's become kind of a cultural icon, especially among certain groups of people on the internet. Now, some folks think that Jordan's appeal and success come only from the fact that he hands out controversial takes like they're free candy. But honestly, I think that's underselling him a lot. There are a ton of reasons why the guy is so well liked. Sure, some things about his personality make him super polarizing, but those aspects of him don't just undo the things that he actually gets right. So you've got to wonder, why shouldn't you listen to Jordan Peterson? I mean, the guy is actually a source of guidance for young men. Say what you will about his target demographic. There's no denying that he's one of the few people who actually reaches out to that community. Nowadays, younger men especially tend to feel isolated from the ongoing discourse, and there's no denying that they feel they're constantly being punched down. So it makes sense why they're attached to the one figure who's actively talking about them and showcasing that things aren't as easy for these young men as the media tends to make it seem. For a lot of folks, Jordan fills that sort of void. In fact, during an interview with Piers Morgan, Jordan even went into how he's one of the few folks in mainstream media who represents a subsect of disaffected young men. And if you've seen that interview, you'll know that Peterson doesn't just side with these young guys because he's trying to score some points or raise his follower count. The way he got visibly emotional at the thought of these youngsters seeing him as a hero goes to show that he truly does care about providing them with some form of guidance. The thing that makes him even more of a hero figure is that most of these youngsters are often characterized as being a part of the incel community. And well, most public speakers tend to not want to be associated with those guys, mainly because of their rather problematic ideals and practices. This only makes them feel even more isolated and alienated by the people who get to speak out in the mainstream media. But Jordan isn't too worried about how he's perceived. And that's why he not only welcomes the idea of being someone that incels look up to, but in some ways is even honored by it. It is this lack of concern for what other people think of his opinions, which is just one of the many compelling arguments for listening to him. Sure, saying things just to get attention isn't exactly a big accomplishment. However, it appears that certain topics are now simply off-limits for discussion, particularly those relating to the increasingly modern cultural shifts that societies are experiencing today. Gender roles and political correctness are both changing rapidly these days. But despite this, traditionalist views on these topics often feel like they're not given as much value. In fact, anyone even choosing to present the more traditionalist viewpoint is subjected to criticism and vitriol. Peterson has managed to change that in a lot of ways. With his large following, he's bringing more traditionalist viewpoints to the center stage and finally giving people who are against the widespread changing of things, such as gender roles, a way to voice their concerns. Even if you disagree with his views,
like you say, well, women in aggregate are paid less than men. Okay, well, then we break it down by age, we break it down by occupation.
You should be able to see why he's so popular because of this major reason. And sure, you don't have to believe in everything he says, but giving him the time of day and actually listening to his arguments before you try to refute them is really important. I mean, how else can you prove someone wrong if you don't even care to find out what their main talking points are? But beyond just this traditionalist approach, there's another big reason to listen to him, and that's the clarity of his communication. Despite the fact that Peterson often tackles a lot of really complex subject matters, from the way he speaks and addresses his audience, you'll get the feeling that he's not trying to confuse them with his words. In fact, the guy tries to make his arguments as simple and concise as possible. If you're ever confused and unsure about a topic, watch him talk about it for a bit, and you're likely going to walk away with a better understanding of it. This approach to argumentation is one of the big factors behind his popularity. He doesn't believe in appearing smarter solely through the use of tough concepts or words. But Peterson's goal is often to win through his concepts and ideas. One such concept is the emphasis on personality responsibility.
You need a family, you need friends. Like, you don't need to have all these things, but you better have most of them. Family, friends, career, educational goals, plans for, time outside of work.
And a greater focus on the meaning and purpose involved in today's discourse. Like, remember the time people were angry at him for correcting the Pope? Apparently, people took offense to the fact that Jordan was trying to call Pope Francis out for promoting social justice and linking it with Christianity. Peterson felt that the concept of social justice seen in Western societies nowadays goes against traditionalist Christian values. And sure, while on the forefront, social justice might not sound like a bad concept. But it's important to look into the meaning behind the current movement too. That's what Peterson takes issue with. A lot of folks miss out on his part of his argumentation, and they needlessly attack his claims without fully understanding what he's actually saying. But there's another reason why he's worth listening to. It turns out that when he's not dishing hot takes on social media, he's talking about things such as psychology, mythology, and philosophy. And honestly, a lot of what he has to say has a ton of value and insights. Even if you don't agree with his points, you can understand why he feels the way he does. As a result, Jordan's ideas tend to be quite stimulating and thought-provoking. Anyone who's able to set aside their bias and actually give some of his discussions a fair shake will likely feel like they actually learned something. But of course, those lectures don't tend to be as popular as some of his more memeable ones. Like the time he accidentally shared an adult video with his millions of followers, or the fact that he's been proven wrong on things such as the fear-mongering he did for Bill C-16 in Canada. I guess people just like to see him get proven wrong. But that doesn't change the fact that he's right about a ton of stuff too. Finally, there's one other really big reason why you should listen to him, and that's his popularity. Honestly, with how big he is on social media, it puts him in a very interesting position. Jordan has the capability to reach out to millions of people, many of whom consider him their hero. Like I've already discussed, this simply means that Jordan has a much greater ability to influence things in a social and political setting than most other speakers today. He's a leader in political and social discourse nowadays, and that alone makes him a really important figure. One that's worth listening to. I mean, if you want to get an idea of just how widespread his message is, consider the fact that he's on really good terms with some really big stars and celebrities in Hollywood. People like Matthew McConaughey are apparently fans of Peterson, and he's even gone on record to state that Jordan is often able to say things openly and discuss ideas that Matthew might have thought about in the past, but hasn't had the ability to properly put into words. It's clear that Peterson is using his platform to discuss ideas and talk about things that many people have felt needed. But it really makes you wonder, would Jordan really succeed in attaining this much attention and having this many people listen to what he has to say, if not for his controversies and activities on social media? Well, either way, things seem to have worked out well enough for him. So from his widespread popularity on social media platforms to Peterson's fame, which turned him into a global phenomenon, those were the main reasons why you should listen to Jordan Peterson.